Okay, back working on this radial arm saw again now. I had the table made for it, and I got the rear tables made for it. So the next thing I needed to do was make the fence for it. One of the things you have to do with the table is to set it up so that it lines up. So when the saw is set up in crosscut mode, like this, the travel of the power head is perpendicular to the back of the table. And the way you check that is by putting the square on the back of the table and running the saw blade back and forth against that square. Well, it wasn't quite lined up, but I noticed that there was a lot of play in this arm in the back, so it was moving this way back and forth a little bit. Oh, I looked up how to adjust that, and there's a adjuster on the back. I just came in and adjusted that, and I've got that set where that's tight now. When this is all locked up in this position, that is perfectly tight. So I just worked on the table, and I got it lined up where it is just as close to perfect as you could want on running this saw back and forth. It just, when I run this blade out to the outside, I've got my square lined up on the back side of the table, and just touch the blade, and if I just run it, it just kisses that all the way back. So that's just about as square as you can get a woodworking tool, or as I need to get it anyway. That's all buttoned back down, all screwed back down tight. I've got my rear fences, rear table set up in here, and so the next thing I wanted to do was make my fence. Well, I push this back, and I set this for the outer fence, in rip with the fence out, and I've got about a ½ inch. So my blade is a ½ inch, my table here is a ½ inch farther in this way than what it would be normally, what the factory table would be with this set at 0. There's a little bit of adjustment on that. Let's see if I can get that to adjust. I need to get a screwdriver. Well, not quite enough. I got it to adjust a ½ inch just by resetting my guide there. Okay, well, that's not enough. Still got a ½ inch. Okay, well, that's something anyway. Well, what my plan is now is I'll go ahead and make a fence, and I'll make a rabbet in the fence and have it stick out a ½ inch on this side of the table. Just make a little rabbet right there, and that should take care of that. For that position. Rear position, we'll have to figure something else out. I've got 3 boards here that I dug out from outside that I could potentially use for a fence. I've got 2 2x6s and 1 2x4. This one 2x6 is a little ratty, and it's just a little short, but it'll work. And then this one is the same thing, but I got plenty long enough length here that I could cut this off and make it work. Thing is, this one was a door frame that I had on something that I tore apart, and it's got nails in it from the siding and stuff, and a bunch of crap in it anyway that's got to come out. And I can run these through the sander and get them down smoothed out so they're not so rough looking, which is one of the good things about the sander. You wouldn't want to try to run something like this through the planer, because you never know where it's got nails or staples and stuff like that, and it could ruin a planer blade. This one's the same way. It had nails in it. I think they're all pulled out of it now. And then I got a 2x4, and I was thinking the 2x4 might not work because I've got to go down 1.5 inches for the thickness of my table, and a 2x4 is only 3.5 inches wide, so if I go down 1.5 inches, that only leaves 2 inches sticking up above the table for a fence, which for normal stuff is probably okay, but I kind of like to have a little bit higher fence for some things. And just ripping small boards, 1-inch boards and stuff, a 2-inch high fence is plenty, but if I'm doing other stuff, then I need a taller fence, and maybe I need to make more than one fence, I don't know. So I guess the first thing to do is to go ahead and get all the hardware out of this piece here. The 2x4 doesn't really have any, but I can trim those down to length for the width of my table, and then see where I go from there. But this one's got a lot of hardware to come out of it, nails and crap come out of it. I've got those boards trimmed up. Now the one board is just barely long enough as it is, so I didn't need to trim it up. The 2x4 and the other 2x6 that was the door post, I've got those cut to the length that width of the table it will be. Now I've got to set up my radial arm saw for a rip cut and rip all those down to good wood. The 2x4 doesn't need to be ripped to size. I'm going to leave it the way it is. I've got both of those boards ripped down to 4 1/4, just a little less than 4.5 inches. That got rid of all of the crap on both of them. So I think what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and get that sander out, hook it up, and run these all down through the sander a few times and get them smoothed up a little bit. It's nice to have them smooth to run boards against them. I had to quit for a little bit. A friend of mine who was not doing too well needed to have a boat moved from down at the harbor out to his place, so we went and got that done before it starts snowing again. The weather gets too bad. Went out in the pouring down rain and moved his boat. It didn't take very long. So that sander is not meant for edge sanding, for running those boards through there on edge like that, but those boards are wide enough that they'll kind of do it. And this 2x4 there has a knot in it that had dried, and the knot was sticking out. I'm proud of the top of the board there on the edge, so I set it up to run that through there and smooth that up a little bit. And then I'm going to do that with those 2x6s too. They're not 2x6s anymore, but anyway, I'm going to run them one edge through there on them too, because those are rough cut lumber, and those edges are going to be kind of wavy. So I'm going to run that 2x4 through there another time or two. Hey guys, well come here. Oh yeah, come here, woof woof woof. Yeah. Saki come outside when I come home and shoot at me for 2 liters of powder.
Aww, poor Saki.
I just said, she was older for a big boy. He's my boy. You're not my boy anymore. You never stay home. You never stay here. No, you don't stay with me anymore.
Oh,
no. Yeah.
Poor Grandpa.
Okay, that's good enough, huh? Turn the vacuum cleaner back on and we'll suck up some of this dirt. Alright, now I'm going to pull a rabbit out of my hat. I need a 1/4 inch rabbit, 1.5 inches wide on those fences. So I've set my 10-inch radial arm saw so it cuts down 1/4 inch deep in these 2x, and I've got it set just a little over 1.5 inches out away from the fence. If it's over 1.5 inches, that's fine. That'll leave a little gap between the fence and the top of the table for sawdust to go down into, so that it doesn't build up against the fence and push the boards away from the fence.
How's it look?
Huh?
How's it look? Well, that's not so bad.
Well, there's my first fence, and that thing is just about perfect. It sits down. I guess it could have been just a little bit deeper because I don't have as much of a gap in there between the top of the table and the rabbit as I thought I was going to. That is just perfect. When we put it in there, the indicator up here was just a little bit off, so it was like a 32nd of an inch, and I was able to adjust the indicator to where it's dead on zero right there. Like I told my son, that's with the this plywood blade on there. If I get a blade on there, carbide tip blade on there, the teeth are going to be a little bit thicker, so I might have to make another adjustment on it, but that is pretty doggone close. I was worrying about those other fences maybe being a little too tall, because one of the things you'd have to take into consideration is the space between the bottom of the motor and the top of the table. Of course, we've got a 12-inch blade in there as opposed to a 10-inch. This motor sits quite a bit higher above the table than the other, that a 10-inch radial arm saw does. So I don't think it's going to be a problem with those taller fences. I'm going to go ahead and rip the rabbit on those other two fences and get those set up to use. Yeah, that looks pretty doggone good, I think. Well, we got ahead and ripped down the rabbit on the two wider pieces. Now these two wider pieces are going to be identical in height, so it doesn't make any difference which one we use on there. And they fit tight down against the table. They don't have the gap in there that I was anticipating. Well, I could run those through the saw, I guess, again, and take a saw kerf off of those. But it's fine. And I run the blade up against it, and it changed the indicator there just a touch, just like a 64th of an inch or something like that. So not a whole lot at all. I was going to adjust the height of it up, and my son turned the deal loose and slid the saw out, and we lost where we had our saw set up at for the depth of cut there. But it turned out okay. It's close enough. I still have adjustment in the indicator up here. I can adjust it for zero. But as I said earlier, this is a plywood blade. There's no set on these teeth. It's a steel blade. If I put a carbide blade on there, the teeth are going to be a little bit wider, thicker. The kerf is going to be wider, so we can adjust it for the kerf if we get a new blade on there. And these taller, deeper fences are going to be just fine. I've got plenty of clearance underneath my motor here for a 12-inch blade. That's not going to be a problem. So I'm happy with that. That table is pretty much finished for now. The next thing I got to do is fix up my extension cord so I can use this. I've got the blade guard down underneath the table. I guess I should go down and get me a good crosscut blade to use for cutting with, and a ripping blade for this, for ripping. And that's primarily what I got it for, is for ripping. So how much depth of cut we got there, I can cut a 4x on that without any problem. Even a rough cut 4x will go through there. Even one of my sawmill rough cut 4x's will go in there. Yeah, I'm happy with that now. That's going to be pretty good, pretty nice. These are wider fences than the 1-inch one. They're I don't know what they wound up. Oh, they wound up being 1 inch and 1/8. Oh, those aren't big enough for that. Anyway, this is what I use on the radial arm saw. I'll have to make blocks for these. These are one way. These would actually mount this way for feeding that direction, and they keep it from kicking back. And then you can set them up at a slight angle, and they help hold the wood in against the fence. There, the yellow ones here go the other way. See, you can roll a board underneath it like this, but that'll help keep it from kicking back. And that one has a mount plate that I can mount right there on that, like that. And put those in relatively close to the blade, and that keeps your hands out of there and stuff too. Helps keep your hands out of it. I've never used this saw since I got it because it didn't have a table on it, and now I've got a table. I've got a second fence here to use. I got, well, 3 fences. This shorter one, and the narrower one, and another wider one. This one is hemlock, so it should hold up pretty good. This one's spruce, so it'll take a little bit of a beating, get dents and stuff in it. And of course, this one was a commercial 2x4, so it's a Doug fir. That thing is pretty much done. Like I said, a couple more things. Fix up an extension cord for it, a cord jumper for it, so I can hook it up to my 220 outlets. Put the guard on it, get a new blade, and it'll be ready to use.